All right, welcome to another show of Ageless Energy. I'm excited to dive in here and talk about the benefits of creatine for women 40 plus. Super important. This is quickly becoming one of our best-selling products, and it's one of our newest products. So that's pretty cool. But this is where I feel like the knowledge, or first knowledge and then action, is transitioning from what we thought creatine was and actually what it can be, from the bodybuilding world to the everyday world. One of the oldest studied supplements. Very cool. So I'm going to jump into that. I'm going to talk about why creatine is probably the most important supplement that you're not taking. If you aren't, I'll list some benefits for you. And then we can talk about some possible downfalls or negatives, and I'll share my opinion with you about that as well. So buckle up, let's dive in. If you're not sure who I am, my name is Drew Tadia, founder and CEO of True Form Life. For the past 20 years, we've been helping women 40 plus increase energy, burn body fat, and balance hormones. So I want to talk about creatine in particular. We just got a new shipment in. So full transparency, those of you that might not know us completely, is we run a coaching business on one side. That is our Metabolism Accelerator program, and then we run a supplement business. And I'm working towards splitting those and running them slightly independently from one another, but that's more for, good morning. That's more for behind the scenes. That's probably not all that interesting for you. Creatine. All right, so I guess there's no other way than just to dive in, and I wrote down some notes for you guys. If you want the show notes afterwards, just comment below and I'll send them to you. But I want to talk about muscle mass in particular. So muscle mass slowly declines naturally. I don't like that word, naturally. I think it declines more because of lack of use. So I believe as we age, we tend to use our body more. It's pretty difficult to argue with maybe the science or the chemistry of the body. Like, things naturally decline, or at the very least change as we age. That's life. And I think it's important to understand that there are things that we can do to prevent certain things in our life, but it really comes down to our lifestyle and how we live. So for example, unfortunately, the more we age, the less we eat. And I feel that food heals, cures, and prevents. So if you have like a food as medicine, let's just quote Hippocrates here, for example, or that's at Aristotle, doesn't matter. Food as medicine. As we age, we eat less food, so we have less medicine, so our body has less of an ability to naturally, I'm going to say naturally with food, heal itself. So our body tends to continue to decline. And I see that from our own family members or from our own friends, is that plates used to be larger and maybe they were too large. So maybe you have some family members that used to be overweight, but they continue to eat less and less, and then you can tell that they're losing not just weight, but they're losing muscle mass. And of course you have osteoporosis, so they're losing bone mass. And I believe this has a lot to do with food and nutrition. So of course, we do a lot of work around nutrition in particular. So we have to continue to eat proper, well-balanced meals to continue to live life freely, sovereignly, if you will. But because of the lack of effort that we put in certain areas like meal planning or grocery shopping or actually preparing the food and eating the food, because of that lack of action, our health declines, and then we say, oh, that's just old age, which I certainly don't believe in. And like I said earlier, certain things come up in life, and maybe it's a bit more challenging as we age and our body chemistry changes, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean we completely remove the accountability of the action that we take in life by not doing anything. So I would first of all, I would suggest making sure that you're eating properly. And maybe that's easier said than done. There's many things that you can do, but I'm getting slightly off track here. I want to focus on the benefits of creatine in particular, because our muscle naturally declines as we age. So I think it's a little around 3% I read 3% every 10 years, but I think it's probably more than that. I would suggest it might be 3% every year. I'd have to get you some better data around that. But as we age, especially, I think it starts after 25, 30-ish, our muscle mass naturally starts to decline. So what can we do? So you can add more protein to your diet, of course. That's an easy one. You can use resistance training workouts, weight-bearing exercises. Not a bad idea. And then, of course, you can use a product like creatine. Now, creatine is fantastic to help preserve muscle mass. It actually can help build muscle mass. I believe long past are the days where people think, or at least this is transitioning, that creatine is just for bodybuilders or people that are trying to get big, bulky muscles. Creatine is fantastic to help preserve the muscle mass that you have. So you can look at creatine as a preventative. And then creatine can also help you build muscle. And that doesn't mean you're going to get big and bulky. That's going to be very difficult to make that happen, especially after 40, after 50, 60. You're working against many different variables. And when I say many different, I'm not just talking about your body in particular. I'm talking about the actions and the lifestyle, because it's seemingly, unfortunately, we tend to become more and more sedentary with age because we have more aches and pains and probably ambition. I believe depression is very high in women in particular as they get older, and it's understandable because that identity, you have to form a new identity of who you are, who you want to become. For example, a lot of women in this age group, they become as a main caregiver, nurturer, they were the mother figure and likely ran a family. Now we're transitioning more into the empty nesters, and those kids have grown up and they've moved on and they have families of their own. So now there's a transition phase of the empty nester, which is confusing. You're not sure where you are, what you're doing, or what your life purpose is. And I believe often that translates or transfers into the grandmother, and now that's a different role. So what does that role look like for you? And then those newer grandmothers are trying to find their place because it's not particularly their kids they're raising, but that's obviously their closely connected family. And it's a very challenging time, and we have the opportunity to talk with women like this every single day. So on a deeper level, I know exactly the challenges that you're going through, and we can certainly help offer clarity and direction and at least get you going in the right direction. Understanding here for this point number one. I'm laughing because I put five bullet points here. I'm only on number one. We're halfway through. I'll move a little bit quicker. But just being stronger. I like our ladies in our programs to think about being strong instead of weight loss. Strong internally, mentally, emotionally, physically stronger. That will increase your metabolism. That will help you burn body fat. The more muscle mass you have, the better metabolism your functions, or the better functioning metabolism that you have, so you can burn body fat more efficiently by having long, lean muscles. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually important, I would suggest. Having creatine on a regular basis can certainly help with that. When I say regular basis, I would suggest daily. Now, when it comes to dosages, this is an interesting one because I grew up as an athlete and we took creatine very early on. And that's something that a lot of parents come to me and they say, is it okay for my child to have creatine? I don't know if creatine is something that we should be having very early on. Like at the time of this recording, we have a 4-year-old. We don't give him creatine, although he does get other supplements. He gets magnesium, he gets greens, spirulina and chlorella, for example. But I wouldn't particularly give him creatine. I'm not an expert in this area. Maybe 16 to 18, they could consider taking creatine. It's probably when that happens. You don't want your body to stop creating creatine. Your body does naturally create a small amount, not enough to make a big difference, but you don't want anything naturally. There's such a, what's the word? There's such a delicate phase as children grow and become the people that they are. They become adults. And it's not just internally, but it's the brain health as well. And creatine has a lot to do with your brain. So I probably wouldn't give kids creatine early on, but creatine is a safe supplement. However, you have to take that with a grain of salt. The caveat to that is there's many creatines out there that have a bunch of junk in them. They have flavoring, coloring, They have additives, preservatives. So you could take any good quality product in its purest form and then chop it up and put a bunch of junk in it. We see that, like we have a really nice organic collagen, and we see that across the board in collagen. And then they say they'll put ashwagandha in there, and then they'll say stress reducing collagen, and it's like just collagen. Or they'll say something, oh, this will help burn body fat, and they'll put like something in there that might slightly aid in burning body fat, but then they put a sexy girl on the cover, and then they put someone that looks like thin and fit, and then they put a bunch of junk in there. So you have to read the ingredients is what I'm getting at. When you're looking at your protein container or your creatine container, it should be 100% pure creatine with nothing else in there. But I think that this is a supplement that I feel at any age, like especially 40, 50, 60, 70, like you should be having a creatine in your cupboard and using it on a regular basis, which is a bit odd because in this age group, a lot of women are like, never heard of creatine, or they may have, and that was like, oh, that was just for my kids, and that they used it for building muscle or for their athletics, and that's not what it's for, not the new information that's coming out. So I was talking about dosages in particular. When it comes to dosages, when I started taking it, it was about 5 grams, maybe 10 grams of creatine, which is perfectly fine. So the regular recommended dosage is 5 grams a day. So that's if you're pulling it in our container, we have a scoop in there, that is 5 grams. I usually take 10 grams. I'll take 5 grams first thing in the morning, and then I usually take 5 grams after I'm working out. Now, newer research is coming out, and I wish I talked to too. One expert, Tim Ferriss, he wrote a bunch of books, but he wrote the 4-Hour Body, and there's tons of scientific research. One of his top recommended supplements is creatine, and he recommends supplementing with 5 to 10 grams of creatine. Okay, now Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she is very well known in the supplement world, in the health world in general, and she mentions taking 20 grams of creatine to help with brain clarity, because she talked about a study that they did, and they took a group of individuals that were deprived of sleep, and then they gave that group 20 grams of creatine. And that group that was deprived of sleep, their cognitive function performed just as well as people that got adequate sleep. So she says she's a world traveling expert and is on TV and podcasts and such. So she says when she's sleep deprived, she'll take 20 grams of creatine to help with her brain function so she can be more prepared for her next interview, let's say. Then I'd heard from another expert, and she said something very similar. She was saying that, and I don't particularly know her name, but she was on a really well-known channel, I would say, that a trusted source that I believe in. And she said that to get more creatine, especially for your brain health, you need to use more creatine, because if you're taking 5 to 10 grams, that your body will absorb that first. Like your muscles, for example, will absorb that first, and there's not much left for your brain. Now, I don't really love the dosage conversation, in particular when people ask me how much should I take, because everyone's doing something different. Like everyone has different lifestyle, everyone has different body composition, working out, stress levels, etc. So I'm not telling you how much you should take. I'm telling you that there's different options, and I'll always share my experience with you and the knowledge that I have, so I can understand that there's other experts that offer different diagnoses, if you will. And for me, I like to stay around 10 grams, and I feel like I will experiment with 20 grams in the near future. But I feel like you should be taking what you feel most comfortable with. 5 grams is a great place to start off with. And if you want to experiment with 10 or 15, I don't see any problem with that. But if you have any concerns, maybe you should talk to a doctor about that, because I'm certainly not one. Okay, so that's dosage in particular. I want to talk about bone health, because this is super important when it comes to women 40 plus, is that osteoporosis is a real thing. Our bones are losing mass, and it becomes more keeping your bones intact. Like you hear people that fall, and they fall and break their arm as they get a little bit older, or they fall and they break their hip, like whatever it is. Like our bones become more fragile as we age. And if you use creatine with, of course, resistance training, I would also throw in there some nutrition, protein, higher protein diet. Creatine can certainly help with bone mass or bone density in particular. So that's another reason that you may want to consider taking creatine on a regular basis. Energy is something that comes up so much. A lot of women in this age group come to us and they say, I don't have any energy. What can I do? How can I get more energy? Creatine is a great idea. So creatine helps regenerate ATP. This is your cell's quick energy source. So if you have creatine in your cells, they have more energy to release than without them. So often we have very depleted cells. You could look at magnesium in particular. If you are slowly building up the stores of magnesium in your cells, your body performs more optimally. And there's a lot of things to match up with that. If you look at vitamin D, for example, if you want your vitamin D to metabolize, then you need your magnesium level stores high enough to help with the absorption rate and the metabolization. And then if you want that D to be driven in the right place, I just did a whole show about calcification. If you missed that show, just comment below and we'll send that over to you. But you need the vitamin or the K2 to help the D, tell it where to go, and the magnesium to absorb the D to begin with. So it's all a nice little, I feel like sometimes people might feel like this is confusing or it's rigid. I feel like it's a nice flow of natural supplements to help improve your life in different ways. So when you're lacking energy in particular, you could look at a creatine to help with the ATP production to give you more energy throughout the day. And that could be running around with your own kids, could be running around with the grandkids, wherever that may be in your life. Creatine can definitely help with that. And you can also look at it as it's not a caffeinated, it's not a caffeinated energy drink with all that other nonsense in it. It's not a coffee that often comes with you have your caffeine crash, so you just try to keep caffeinating to get through the day. You don't have to worry about any of that with creatine. It's just natural and pure, should be. Pay attention, look at the ingredients. What is happening there? That was crazy. I want to talk about adverse effects here briefly, because I've had this a couple times come across, and someone said to me, I've heard that creatine retains water and causes you to bloat. Now, I haven't had anyone in particular, like any of our clients or our customers, write in and tell us that's been happening to them, but I've heard that question come through a couple times. Now, in my opinion, it's possible. I haven't had the experience happen to me, and I haven't had the experience come directly from any of our customers or clients. So that doesn't mean it's not possible, or that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. My thoughts behind this is any type of supplement can offer someone adverse effects. So at the very top surface level is that there's some people that are supplement resistant. So they've had one bad experience, or they've heard from a friend that's had a bad experience. And that could have been taking it themselves, or that could have been some multi-level nonsense that they got sucked into and they either tried to sell it or they bought it and they had all these shipments come through. I think that is becoming more of a thing of the past. But regardless of your experience, a lot of people have had a negative experience with supplements. So in that case, a lot of people are resistant to taking supplements, which means they'll find any reason why it doesn't work. And I'm not saying that to say that there isn't any adverse effects for different natural supplements across the board. There certainly can be. I just believe that on the surface level, many times people have had a negative experience and they're going to try a supplement, but they don't particularly believe in it. They just think that they should take it, or they want to prove that it doesn't work. And then in that situation, they'll tell a friend or family member that this happened and it's the supplement's fault, so stay away from it. Okay, that's number one. That's at the surface level. And then number two, this is why I don't love the whole dose, like how much should I take? I don't love that question, because there's a whole laundry list of questions and conversations and things that we need to know before we can actually diagnose or help you better understand, right? Sometimes someone has something going on within their body, or they're resistant. They might be gluten resistant or dairy resistant, just for example. And then they take a product and that body counterreacts, or that supplement counterreacts with their body for whatever reason. That doesn't mean it's not going to work for someone else. Or because maybe that supplement didn't particularly work well in your body, doesn't mean it's not going to work well in someone else's. my suggestion is that, or my thought process is, what are the negative and positives? In most situations, I weigh. And when I look at something like creatine, and because of how well it can work, or how beneficial it can be for women in this age group, I've talked about preventing sarcopenia, which is you're losing muscle mass, how it can help prevent osteoporosis, which is losing bone mass, how it can help with brain function. Like, there's so many benefits of using creatine. To me, those far outweigh any little bit of bloating that you may be dealing with. So in bloating, in most cases in particular, the bloating comes from lack of digestion. So your digestion isn't working properly, which then has a number of issues that come up on top of that. Like, for example, your hormones tend to be out of whack when your digestion isn't. And then when you can't process foods, you can't digest foods, that's where you have indigestion, gas, bloating, sometimes constipation or diarrhea. It's all very closely connected. And most of that is very much linked to your gut bacteria. Okay, so if you don't have the gut bacteria to balance the food that you're eating, your body tends to naturally bloat, which is where that minnow belly comes in. And that minnow belly usually comes in around 40, but I find it's more between 45 to 55, that minnow belly naturally appearing. And I don't believe it's natural, I believe that's lifestyle. So because someone may have a bloat, they either had one already, or it's coming because of the age group, or because of their lifestyle, because of their gut bacteria, they may try a creatine and then say, oh, I'm bloated because of the creatine. And again, I'm not trying to downplay that there could be bloating or there could be issues with creatine or other supplements. I'm just saying that to listen to one person, or to try a supplement one time, or to not look at your lifestyle or your stress levels or your sleep patterns and just say it's this supplement in particular. I think that we could look at anything in our life. We could say, oh, it's the TV that's keeping me up, but you're eating chips and scrolling through your newsfeed while watching TV, and these are all stimulants in our lifestyle. So it's probably not the TV. So that's what I'm trying to get at here. So when it comes to brain function, I'll have a couple more tips for you and then I'm going to let you go. But when it comes to brain function in particular, a lot of women come to me and they'll say, I have brain fog. I don't know what this brain fog is. I've never experienced it before. I'm having trouble remembering names. I don't remember appointments. And it becomes this new identity that's scary, because your brain is very important, obviously. Now, there's more and more research coming out about creatine in particular, of how it can help brain health, which is another reason why I think it's so important for women in this age group to be taking creatine on a regular basis. Creatine can help improve your cognitive function. It can help improve your memory, and it can also help offer more clarity in your mind as well. So it'll help remove that brain fog that a lot of women are more concerned about at this age. I had a couple more here, but I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that gave you some tips and information of what you can do to help improve your situation, improve your lifestyle as a whole. And that's what I have for you today. I just mentioned we have a brand new shipment that just came in of creatine. So if you want to grab any of ours, it's 100% pure. It's creatine monohydrate, no additives, fillers, third-party tested. It's a really good quality one. That's one we use every day. trueformlife.com/shop. And we just did a bunch of new upgrades and edits and improvements on our website. So hopefully that will help improve your experience when working with us as well. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.